Because of Mythbusters' widespread love and popularity, a lot of people probably think they know all the secrets behind this explosively entertaining show. That would be a myth, though. Here are a couple fascinating facts about everyone's fave mad scientists. Before appearing in Mythbusters, Kari Byron was a student of film and culture at San Francisco State University, and she ultimately wanted to join the special effects industry. That interest eventually led her to M5, the FX company founded by fellow Mythbuster Jamie Hyneman. She was actually an unpaid intern for a while, and that opportunity eventually blossomed into a job offer to join Mythbusters.
Everybody loves an intern. They work hard, they're trying to prove themselves, and they are cheap or free.
But she never lost her artistic streak. If anything, she learned to marry the more explosive elements of the show into her own artistic expression. One very clear example of this is her explosive paintings. To create these works, she lights gunpowder on fire and then scrapes burnt clay away from the page to make a series of haunting images. She likens the process to, quote, controlled chaos. Exploding pants? Killer whirlpools?
Have you ever really looked at the sky?
With so many experiments over the years, you have to wonder if there are any myths the group regrets having busted. Adam Savage apparently wishes he'd ixnayed one segment, not because the experiment was particularly dangerous or difficult to film, but because it involved magic. At least that's how Savage sees it. The experiment itself involved determining whether or not keeping a shaving razor beneath a makeshift pyramid would actually keep it sharper due to so-called pyramid power. Savage regrets filming the segment because he believes it was ultimately impossible to apply the scientific method to that particular experiment. He believes that they were tasked with, quote, trying to prove a negative, since there was no real way to measure success or failure. Mythbusters was all about science, which means it never let something like corporate sponsorship get in the way of truth, right? Alas, it sounds like even Mythbusters wasn't immune to advertiser pressure. They reportedly decided to axe an entire episode about RFID, that handy technology that lets you wave your credit card in front of a card reader so you don't have to swipe it. You've no doubt heard that RFID isn't necessarily secure. Well, Mythbusters got wind of that too and planned an entire episode about the hackability of the technology. But according to the Register, lawyers for major credit card companies intervened, and the episode never saw the light of day. In 2008, Adam Savage opened up about the situation at a Hackers on Planet Earth conference.
They absolutely made it really clear to Discovery that they were not going to air this episode talking about how hackable this stuff was.
He claimed Discovery, quote, backed down because they relied so heavily upon advertising revenue. That sounds like the honest truth, but something must have happened behind the scenes. Savage later backtracked and changed his tune, saying, "The decision was made by our production company and had nothing to do with Discovery." Whatever you say, Adam. Mythbusters was billed as a family show, so there were certain things the program simply wasn't allowed to do. For example, they couldn't even show a simulation of a particular body part while testing the legendary peeing on the third rail myth, even though they were clearly using a synthetic tube. Oh, and in case you're wondering how that experiment worked out, Anyway, according to TV Tropes, censors forbade Mythbusters from airing an entire episode about farting.
Knock yourself out.
Undeterred, the team tried a segment on farting later on, but this time they followed all sorts of oddball rules, like only using the word flatus instead of fart, supposedly to make the whole thing sound more scientific. To work around all the bodily functions they couldn't show on screen, the Mythbusters team built a fart machine.
I am planning to build a machine that can also eject a flatus. That's what all this equipment is.
The result was really funny and actually rather vulgar, even though they were basically using a whoopee cushion. Mythbusters was a geeky show. You can gloss over that fact as much as you like, but pretty much every cast member was unabashedly geeky. And if you watched the show, you were pretty geeky too. And what's the holy grail of geekdom?
But I was going into Toshi Station to pick up some power converters.
Star Wars, obviously. As you can imagine, it's not particularly easy to work something like Star Wars into your myth-busting franchise. After all, Star Wars is a closely guarded property, and there are hoops to be jumped through before you can start busting lightsaber and stormtrooper myths. Adam Savage told The Hollywood Reporter he was surprised how open Lucasfilm turned out to be with their permissions. The team wasn't allowed to animate lightsaber effects, but other than that, they were pretty much given free rein. There was one important provision. Savage joked that Mythbusters couldn't depict stormtroopers shaking their moneymakers. He told The Hollywood Reporter, "I don't think they wanted us to twerk with a stormtrooper or something like that." Makes sense. The Lucasfilm people probably didn't want another Christmas special on their hands.
Please, I have enough aggravation.
The Mythbusters had some very public mishaps, but people might not entirely realize just how common it was for the cast to injure themselves in the line of duty. According to CNET, Mythbuster accidents ran the gamut, from explosions to an injury by goat. In fact, Adam Savage once said the show was, quote, 4 minutes of science and 10 minutes of me hurting myself.
He holds his breath, tugs on the door, pushes his whole weight against it, but nothing happens.
In one infamous experiment, the team wanted to find out if an explosion could actually knock the socks off a mannequin. The explosion wound up shattering the windows of a nearby home. Ironically, the blast quite literally knocked a woman off her couch, sort of like knocking the socks off a mannequin, but not really. Co-host Tori Belleci's on-set accidents included getting kicked in the crotch by a goat and spectacularly wiping out while trying to jump over a red wagon on a bicycle.
I'm okay.
Savage was the recipient of one of the show's more serious injuries. He once broke his hand on a blast chamber. Surprisingly, most of the injuries on the show were fairly minor, just stitches and broken fingers. Not bad for a show with a premise that's firmly grounded in blowing stuff up. Hopefully the safety experts were well compensated. No one deserved that paycheck more. Mythbusters is real science, not mad science. It's not like they ever received orders to build a death ray or something. Except that time President Obama quite literally gave them orders to build a death ray.
Mythbusters is testing out various hypotheses, and I think that we've got a big one that hasn't been thoroughly tested.
Which one is that?
Well, it is Archimedes' solar ray.
In a 2011 lecture, Savage said he'd never met anyone with as much charisma as Obama.
Then Obama walks in and immediately releases all the tension. I've never seen anything like it. He walked in, he introduced himself to us, he shook hands with the crew.
The former president goes on to gently admonish Savage and Jamie Hyneman for failing to thoroughly test the solar ray back in 2006, when they first attempted to create it. The likely mythical device dates all the way back to the 2nd century, and it was designed to ignite the sails of enemy ships with highly focused mirrors. The team recruited 500 people with mirrors to retry the experiment. Once again, they failed to prove the concept. According to Gizmodo, the president's appearance on Mythbusters was actually part of a White House initiative to get kids more interested in science. And let's face it, a death ray is the perfect gateway drug to the world of physics and beyond.
Keep those mirrors on the sail! Ooh, he just took out one of your great cameramen!